Hey, okay, so today we're going to be coding out a new project. You're going to learn a little bit about HTML and CSS. So what you should do is go into your glitch account or just start a new glitch project, and we're going to start a new project, and it's going to be a hello web page. Now, when you start this up, you're going to have an index, a script, and a CSS. What we're going to do is actually just clear out all these files. We don't need any of this stuff. Get that all out of there. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to start fresh with our own index.html. Now today we're going to make a little quick website about my cat, my favorite thing on earth. So besides my baby and my wife. All right, so let's start by starting up our document. So we type in doc type, HTML. Remember, that's how we start our, and then we type in HTML. Those are the way we start our website. Now within our HTML, we're going to create two new tags. We're going to do our head tag. Remember, that's where we put all our behind the scenes stuff. And we're going to put a title. Remember, that's the top tag. And underneath the head, we're going to put a body. So that's our starting boilerplate for a website. Now the title of this is going to be called Siegel's Cat. Okay? Now, we want to link our CSS over to this website. So what we want to do is when we have two different files, we're going to keep all our HTML in the index.html, and we're going to keep all our style in the style.css. That's basically what professional coders do, because they want to keep their code, their separate languages in separate files. So I want all my HTML in one place, I want my CSS in another place. Makes sense, right? It stays organized. So we're going to have to link our file over first. So what we're going to do is this. We're going to type in link, okay? The rel is going to be called a style sheet, so that's the relationship, and the href is going to be equal to style.css. That's where we're getting the file from. Okay? So now that we got this linked together, that's everything in the head. Remember, we got our title and we linked over our other file. Now we can start making our body. All right? That's what we're going to actually, the user is going to see this. So what we're going to start this off by is we're going to make a div with a ID equal to header. All right. And inside this, I'm really going to start off by just I'm going to put these three things in. I'm going to put an H1. All right. And in that H1, I'm going to say Mr. Siegel's awesome cat. All right. Then I'm going to put an image. All right, you might remember that's an IMG tag. That's how I put images. And we're going to put a source. Now that we're going to leave the source blank right now, we're not going to put anything in there. And then I'm going to create another div. All right, and so those are my three things. So in this div, this header div, I have three things. I have these words, right? I have my image, and I have another div, which we'll work with later. Oh, and don't forget to put that closing slash. You'll see this little arrow that I never add the source. So in this, I have, now if we were to look at this, we'll take a live look at my my web page. Hopefully it shows up. And you'll see nothing interesting going on, right? It just says Mr. Siegel's awesome cat. Now let's actually make this thing look pretty good. So let's style this up. So we'll go to our style.css, and what we're going to do is this. You might remember to style each ID or like specific part of the page, you have to do hashtag. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to style my header. Remember, if it's an ID, I do hashtag header. Oh wait, maybe you don't know this, but to style an ID, so this is an ID of header, what I'm going to do is actually going to put hashtag header, and this will style anything with the ID of header. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a background color. And the way we do that is with background. Now, the thing is, if you really want a nice looking website, you could just put purple here, right? Which would be like, whatever, it'll look like purple, but that's kind of whack. What the professionals use is this thing called a linear gradient generator. So what we're going to use is a linear gradient. Now linear gradients, if you look at like Instagram or any other, like Facebook, anything that, oh, that's my Instagram. Let's, if you just look here, this is a linear gradient. It's like colors that change. So I'm going to go to, we can use, this is the simplest linear gradient generator. So my color.space, I love this one. It's pretty good to use. Let's make a nice little green to green generator. I'm going to generate this, and I'm going to copy and paste this code, and I'm going to put it here. Now, if you look at my website now, I get this cool. You see how it like changes over time? That's really what a professional would do. They use these linear gradients, so it's not just like one blocky color. Now, the problem I have with what I have is that it doesn't take up the full screen. So what I'm going to do is actually make this div a little bit bigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this div, sorry, that's so wrong. I'm going to make the height equal to 100 VH. And what that means, VH means view height. So I'm going to use 100% of the view height. So you see how it goes totally top to bottom? I could have used 50, and that would be half the view height. So it'd be about half as big. See, half. So we're going to keep it at 100. I want this to be the total length here from top to bottom. Now, I want to start doing things with these words. All right, it looks really ugly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my index, and to style these words, I'm going to add an ID of header text. And what that's going to allow me to do is going to allow me to style these words now. So watch as I style this. So right now it's kind of ugly looking. Let's add some styles to this. So if I go down a little bit and I type in header text, okay, what I'm going to do is first I'm going to change the color of it. So I'm going to give it a color of white. Okay, just like a white color. Looks a little nicer already. Now what we're going to do is let's make it a little bit bigger. Font size, we're going to make it do a 300. How does that sound? Okay, it's a little bit too big. Let's make it maybe 80. Does that sound better? Yeah, 80 looks good. Let's change the like how bold it is. We use this thing called font weight. I'm going to make it let's make it 900. That's the biggest. That's actually like the boldest you can make it. It takes in like 900, 700, takes these different arguments. Actually, I didn't change anything. We'll take that out. Okay, so now we're going to actually text transform this. And I'm going to do uppercase. What this just does is just makes everything uppercase. It just looks a little prettier when it's uppercase. So, ooh, look, everything's uppercase now. Now, I hate the font here, so let's call the font family. This changes the style of the font. So I want this to be Helvetica. Okay, let's take a look here. Okay, better font, right? Now, the last thing I want to do is I want to center it. So I'm going to do text align center. And what this does is centers it. Now also it's a little bit high. I want this to be a little bit lower. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add padding to the top of this. So padding top, make this 50 pixels. Let's see how that looks. Oh, I must have done something wrong. Oh, I forgot that. Let's take a look. It's still not low enough. Let's do padding top 100 pixels. And what this padding does is it actually adds space between like the top of the div, which is over here, and the bottom, like where these words are. So it's adding some space here. So the more space I add, I can like make it move farther and farther. So you can actually take a look at this. If you do the inspect element, see if this works. What the hell's going on with this? Okay. If you look here, you see this orange space at the top right here? That's called the padding. So if I change the padding, let's say I change this to like 100 again, you'll see there's less of that orange space. So if I go back here and I take a look, you see how the orange space is a little bit less? If I put it to 0, you'll see there's even less of it. See how the orange space is now completely gone almost? So that padding adds that orange blank space in between things. So let's go back to 100. I'm going to get this out of here. Oops. And let's get those developer tools out. Okay, this looks pretty good. There's also a little bit of this white space that appeared on top. I'm going to just make that go away by typing this in. Let's do margin. I'm going to set it equal to 0. Okay, and don't forget your semicolons or else the CSS doesn't work. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. Now let's add a little image of my cat. Okay, so I'm going to go to image on Instagram. So let's look up cat. If you go to images, this looks like a pretty dope cat. So I'm going to copy image address. All right, and I'm going to put that into my source. So if I go back to my indexation, remember that source here? Let's copy and paste that in. Now if we look at this, my cat image is way too big. Way too big. Right? I need to make this smaller. So what we're going to do is add an ID to this so we can style it. Right? We want to give it like a name. So we're going to give this an ID of pick. Now that it has an ID name, I can start styling it in my CSS. So I'm going to go pick. And the way we're going to change the size of it is by going with its width. We're going to change the width of it. And we're just going to make it 300 pixels. All right? So that means start to finish will be 300 pixels. See? Start, finish, 300 pixels. Not bad. Now, I kind of like it when my images are a little bit more rounded. So we could do this thing called border radius. And what I'm going to do is make it perfectly round by using 100%. Now, if you see, when I use this, it's going to make it perfectly round. Now, it doesn't have to be perfectly round. What if I put 50%? It'll be half rounded. So hold on. Oh, I guess that didn't work. Maybe like 10%. See how it's like kind of boxier, but it's not totally rounded? But yeah, I want it to be totally round, so I'm going to do 100%. That totally rounds it out. Now, I want it to move all the way to the left. So there's a few ways to do this. One way you could do it is we set the display to block. I'm not going to explain exactly what that does right now. We're going to set the margin left to auto. And I'm going to do margin right auto. Why is there an error? Oh, there's 1,000%. Okay, so you see how that went to the center? Now what that did was it basically said, I want you to add margin left to this and margin right to this. And I want you to do it automatically so it's in the center. That's what that does, okay? So that three code sequence basically centered my cat. Now also, it's a little bit too high, so I want to give it a padding again. Let's make it go up a little bit. So let's give padding top. Let's do 30 pixels. Let's see if that helps make it just move down a little bit. Not enough. Let's move it down a little bit more. Let's do 100 pixels. Oh, that's too much, and that looks gross. Let's actually do margin top. Let's do 50 pixels. That should look good. Okay, so look, my cat's looking pretty awesome. Now, I want to tell people a little bit about my cat. So let's go back to our index.html. So remember this div that we created over here? Sorry, I'm going to actually make this a little bit more condensed. So I got my h1, I got my image, and I got this final div. In this div, I want to put two things. I want to put a paragraph tag because I want to tell people about my cat. My cat is freaking super dope, yo. It could eat your cat or your dog or your face. It's true, all things about my cat. And after that p tag, I'm going to add an a tag. This is what we call, this is what a link is. I'm going to say, click here to learn more. All right. So we're just going to put a link there. This link won't link to anything, but actually we can make it link to something if we do an href. The href was like how we make it link to another thing. I'll make it link to, I don't know, this website with the cats. All right. Oops. You don't have to do that if you don't want. That's just crazy talk. All right, so now this div, it has two things in it. It has this paragraph and it has this click here to move more. So if you look here, I got this down here now, but it looks gross. So what we're going to do, we're going to style it up. So first thing I'm going to do is going to style this div. So I have to add an ID to it. If I want to style something, I usually add an ID first. So I'm going to give it an ID of info. Okay. And as you kind of see the pattern here, I'm going to go to my style.css. I'm going to do hashtag info. And what we're going to do is this. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I want my color to be white. So what this is, everything in my div, I want the font color to be white. So there we go, except for the A, but you see it's white colored. Now I want to give this actually a background. And let's give it a background of purple. I know purple is a little bit gross, but we'll just give it a purple background now. Let's see, oh, I forgot the semicolon. Oh, and see, now I got a purple. But I don't like that it's end to end. You see how it goes from one end to the other? That's kind of gross. I want it to be kind of centered in the middle. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm actually going to add some margin left. Okay. And what this is going to do is add some space to the left of it. I'm going to do 50 pixels. And then I'm going to do margin right. So this is going to add some space to the right of it. And do another 50 pixels. So you see how I got, and I know you can't, I have to go like that. There's the same amount of space on both sides here. So now I got a little bit. So that looks okay. Maybe let's add a little bit more space on both sides. I could do 200 and let's do 200. See how that looks. All right, it looks a little bit nicer. I just want to make it move down a little bit. Margin top, get a little more space from the top. Let's do 50 pixels. Okay, so this should look a little bit nicer. Okay, it looks nice, but it doesn't look great. Now I want the text to be centered, so we can use the text align. And I'm going to make it so everything, all the text inside of it is centered. So if you see now, everything's centered. Now the problem is, if you look here, since I added margin between these two spaces, what I want to do is actually add padding. Now, padding is going to create a space between these words and the top of the div. I think I told you this later. So if I want something, Okay,